Now, one of the things is when you go back and you study the ancient world, and one of the reasons why this is really important, this series, is so that you can see that we can go back far. Further we go back, the more we see that so many different civilizations had mythologies. We find so many different civilizations throughout the world, some with remnants, artifacts, what have you, claiming to be much older than ancient Kemet. The thing is this: there is no two ancient civilizations on this planet that we have discovered that we can find as much information about as ancient Greece and ancient Kemet. And you have to think about this. Because one, we know we can go back 3000 BCE with ancient Kemet, Narma, 3000 BCE. I mean, that's long. And it seems as if when you get to about 1000 BCE, you start getting in Greek mythology, the Greek culture. You start hearing about these Greek myths. And we can't find any other culture that we can follow so far back and have so much detail. We're talking about with the, Homer, Odyssey, the Iliad, the whole world of Greek mythology and Greek stories, from, the Orphic Theogonies, as I'm going to talk about, his Theogonies. I mean, this stuff is old. We're talking about 1000 to 700 BCE in this time frame. We can't find nothing else from no other culture or civilization on this planet that dates back so far with so much information. Think about that. So when we get into the whole conversation about, conquering, and about civilizations that was conquered, how information was lost and burned, or what have you, this is one of the reasons. But again, you got to pay attention to the fact that for somehow, the Greek and ancient Egyptians, their whole theology, their whole history, a lot of it survived. Now, the ancient Egyptians, because one, they put it in stone, and the stuff was so beautiful and so important that they couldn't dare destroy it all. They took away what they could take away. They hid what they hid, and we have what we have. But we've been able to piece together large parts of what we have today. Now, in Greek mythology, and what you're going to see in this video, and what you're going to understand by the end of it, is how much we are immersed in the same story over and over again. It's going to make a lot more sense later in a second, but it's amazing. And the main point is you have to really figure out, and this is going to show you clear by the end of this video, who exactly is in power and what exactly they are doing and how crazy it is. There's a lot of stuff people are not seeing and not realizing when you pay attention to Greek mythology, when you pay attention to the stories that we have been told, the information that's out there, and you start to put it in context with everything else. And then slowly the picture starts to reveal itself and you start to see what's going on. Now, you have many people talking about Sumer, ancient Mesopotamia, and all these other ancient places that people want to proclaim, is older than ancient Kemet. And a lot of places, not saying that, ancient Egypt is the oldest, the first civilization or what have you, because we know that's not true. But it's a reason. It's a reason why. We can talk about all these other ancient civilizations, but it's a reason why they go back to Kemet. Ancient Kemet is the most researched thing in all of history, in all of recorded history. There is nothing that has been researched more than ancient Egypt. Nothing that has been copied more than ancient Egypt. As I've shown you guys, we owe so much of our system, the things we have from, toys, dolls, board games, all the way up to sports, we find back in ancient Kemet. So there has been no other civilization in the history of mankind that we know of that has been copied more than ancient Kemet, that has been mimicked. I mean, look, Freemasonry. Everything that entails comes from ancient Kemet. So much has been stolen These people that's studying the doctrine of the occult and all these esoteric, books and meanings, this stuff goes back to ancient Kemet. It doesn't come from Sumer and Mesopotamia or, the Mayans, the Olmecs, or what have you. And when you go back and start looking at a lot of these civilizations that people are talking about, the information we can trace back to ancient Kemet, as I have been showing you guys. So it's a reason why they fixated on ancient Kemet. It's a reason why they put that pyramid on the back of the dollar bill. The reason why everything that we see is, we could trace it back there, is because there's something about that civilization. And from my research, to me, it is the last remnants of the civilization of who the ancient Egyptians called the gods, the ones with power. It's the same thing when you get into Greek mythology that they are talking about. So you have this line to where you have this civilization of ancient Egyptians who they say, and the Greeks say, that before these people, somehow in Kemet, before they came, there was this civilization or these gods, these beings that ruled before the dynasties, before Norma, before the people who we know from ancient Kemet that we have been studying over the years, that they talk about before them were the gods. And it's so weird how the Greeks put it, same type of way, that you have this world of the gods before men was created. And it's so many different stories, all with esoteric meanings about how we came about, that you really got to dig into. But again, a lot of people want to talk about these ancient civilizations. It's a reason why, and as you're going to see in this video, when you pay attention, one, it all goes back to ancient Greece. And we know the Greeks stole it from ancient Kemet, so it goes back there. So it's a lot of stuff people are missing and not seeing as it pertains to ancient Greece and ancient Kemet. So now whatever happened to those beings, whatever happened to that generation before the dynasties, has to be responsible for our situation, responsible for the fact that we are no longer in power, and basically must be behind the rise of the European power, because it just fits that all of a sudden you have, this war, and, seemingly the original man, the melanated people of the planet, is somehow, put in this prison, this situation where we are not allowed to progress in any areas as far as, intellectual advancement or any type of advanced civilization. We have been enslaved and oppressed, for a reason. And it just goes back to what I was saying. I mean, think about it. You have the Greeks, you have the Romans talking about the ancient Egyptians, how great and mighty they were, about the Greeks and Romans coming in there to learn and study with the Egyptians. Think about what they was able to do and accomplish. Think about what they could have brought to the people, what they was trying to do. Think about who in their right mind would cause the collapse of such a civilization and a people. So much they did to help, so much information and knowledge that they had. Why would you want to cause the downfall of these people who never raised their hand to no other civilization or group of people? They was fixated on one thing. Knowing who they were, being spiritual people, and figuring out what took place, what happened, how to get it back. They wasn't in a position to where they was trying to go out and conquer the planet, as we see with the Europeans. So why take down that civilization? Everything that we see with the fall of Kemet and the information, the knowledge, just the way it was left, was as if, we can't use it. I mean, you got to look at it that way, because that's exactly what it was. So the only way you would cause the downfall of that civilization is if it does not benefit you. If you can't get out of it what you want out of it, but you don't want nobody else to get something out of it either. And that's exactly what happened. By the same token, you can ask the question, you are now in possession of the greatest civilization that you have ever known. You have it. You conquered it. It's yours. Why not keep it? Why not hold on to it? And, basically they kind of sort of did, and they still own it. And, they kind of sort of still use it when you understand that situation. But the reason why the Europeans, of course, couldn't keep it and rule it and be the face of Kemet is, of course, because of the heat. And the fact that other surrounding civilizations knew who the ancient Egyptians was. And just the simple fact of keeping that kingdom and that system going would keep resonating with us Africans. Keep us in the knowledge and understanding that that's us, that's our power, not yours. You just conquered it. So what is it you're trying to hide from us? So it's better that we leave this stuff. Don't tell nobody about it. Don't talk about it. Don't teach the Africans about it. Just, twist it. Make them be unsure of the situation in ancient Egypt, which is what they did. See, they couldn't be there. White men can't be there in that heat, excavating. You heard about the so-called curse of the mummy, what kept happening to those Englishmen when they was down there. They was dying from cancer, strokes, and all kinds of stuff because of the heat. So if you own the Arabs, if you run in Islam, that system, you can have the Arabs, go in there, excavate. They can withstand the heat. And since you own that system, since you control Egyptology and these people that's running the country, the artifacts that's found, the information that's found, you can keep under wraps. You can keep the cover up going because you run these people. This is one of the reasons why they let the Arabs in and did not allow us to go back into ancient Egypt to figure out what was there, to uncover it and then have the knowledge, because they knew how important it was. So they secured it for the Arabs and keep it away from us. Everything is pointing there for a reason. It's telling you where to go with the study. Everything falls back to these two groups, the Greeks and the ancient Egyptians, and what was going on. The Greeks taking us into the future. And following anything that they doing is like, what's the point? Well, we need to be staying with the ancient Egyptians and what they was trying to figure out in the past. That's the key, which, we get into. But it's definitely important to understand that fact, that they did exactly, what they always do. And when I'm giving you guys the Bible series and talking about in Exodus and Deuteronomy and Leviticus and what have you, in Numbers, the spoils of war, and them basically using that same MO, going into these civilizations, conquering and taking off with the information, what they can use to keep, building their empire. So even when you look it up in the Bible, from Exodus 12:36, and the Lord had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they let them have their requests. Thus they plundered the Egyptians. And again, where in the Bible, where in that story do you see especially in Exodus, what do you see in the story of the Israelites and the Egyptians where the Israelites are basically taking the Egyptian shit? You don't see that. So again, this is another hint of them talking about themselves, the Greeks. The Greeks are the ones who plundered the Egyptians. There's no proof. There's nothing to show that Israelites plundered ancient Kemet. It says the sons of Israel captured the women of Midian and their little ones, and all their cattle and all their flocks and all their goods they plundered. So, it's just giving you the same MO of what the Greeks have been known to do. Conquer civilizations, steal their stuff, keep moving. And the Israelites, as I talk about in the Bible series, being the Greeks. It's going to make a lot of sense as we go on. All this stuff going to come together. Trust me. This is something that people really need to understand and see and make that connection. Because there's a lot of people who still are not sold on the ancient Greeks being the ones behind all of this, and not really getting that understanding that we're talking about the same people here when we're talking about the Romans, when we're talking about the Germans, when we're talking about any other Europeans. They're Europeans. It doesn't matter. They are in this together, whether you believe it or not. Everything else, it's a song and a dance. It's all politics bullshit. All to keep the veil, cover over our eyes about what's really going on and what these beings are really trying to do on this planet. So now what's known by scholars who study antiquity, who study ancient Kemet and ancient Greece or what have you, What's known by these people that is not put out there mainstream is the fact that, of course, Greek mythology, which we have been taught in school, all the information, everything that's out there is in fact stolen Egyptian mythology and plagiarized Egyptian mythology. Basically, the stories switched up to fit, the ancient Greeks. And this is something that's real easy when you get deep into it and study the two. You can see it clear as day, as I said. But we know from Egyptian mythology, we have the primordial, 8. We have the ancient Egyptian creation story. And everybody's got this creation story. There's a lot in common with all of them. We got the ancient Egyptian creation story. We know about the Adod, the primordial 8, or, the primordial egg. We know about Ptah, the waters of Noon, the dark abyss, or what have you, all that talking about the ancient Egyptian creation story with Atum and how everything came into existence. And it's basically giving you a parable about the powers that's basically, first, which is going to initiate the existence of everything else when you break down the story and understand what it's saying esoterically. We know about that with ancient Kemet. Now, the thing is, you get into Greek mythology and the Greek, creation story and getting into all the information, and it's the same. They're giving you Egyptian mythology, showing you that they basically took the same story. So in Greek mythology, you have the primordial gods. Now it says here, primordial gods. The primordial gods, or protogenoi, which basically means the first beings in existence, the first beings in creation of Greek mythology, were the most basic components of the universe, which emerged fully formed at creation. They included earth, air, sea, fresh water, underworld, darkness, night, light, day, procreation, and time. And when you look at these, notice the one down there that is Geb and Nut. That says Uranus. If you understand Greek mythology, we know Uranus being the father of Kronos, and Kronos kills him with that sickle, basically castrates him. Long story. But you see here they have the list of these primordial gods, and Kronos being one. And it's a whole lot to get into with this story because you have so many different versions of the story, going from Greek mythology, going from Orphism, and the whole thing with the Diogenes of Hesiod, or Hesiod, however you want to pronounce his name. So many different stories in Greek mythology. Same thing in ancient Egyptian mythology. They were told different depending on what town or what part of the country you was in. But clearly we can see with this, the primordial gods, we got the primordial gods of ancient Kemet, and that the two basically are similar. So now I talked about generational indoctrination. Basically, if you want to get the future, and that's something you got to think about because it's deep when you start to really pay attention. We're talking about teaching kids now so that later the future generation, when they're older, are doing exactly what we want. So you have to think about the type of dedication, as I always say. These people spending the time, the years, teaching these kids so that when they grow up, the information that they have is just normal, regular life. They're going to teach their kids, so on and so forth. So understanding generational indoctrination is understanding the fact that if we just teach the kids, guess what? Everything else is going to take care of itself because they're going to grow up and teach their kids, and so on and so forth. And then we just got to teach the kids. We don't have to worry about it later on because it's going to be the norm. And it's exactly what's happening in our society, today. And the ancient Greeks, you go back to that time, them basically going into ancient Kemet and seeing how the system was run and understanding that. When you really pay attention, how do you basically run the system? And it's exactly how I just said. Everything that we know, we are taught at a young age. And as we grow older and we see adults doing exactly what we was taught, it's normal. Anybody that goes against that normal system, the normal things that we do, is weird, and it will stand out like a sore thumb. So this is how you establish civilizations of people to be under your control, under your system. You start with generational indoctrination, teaching the kids and getting the kids to understand this information, pass it down, so on and so forth. And they looked at the ancient Egyptian civilization and said, okay, well, these people are basically going and following because they was taught to do so. And they copied that. And it's just that simple. They looked at the situation and said, okay, well, we're going to come up with the same type of system. And we're going to create these stories and mythologies to keep our people in line, to get them to follow what we want them to follow. So all you have to basically do now is come up with the right story, the right structure, the right teachings to teach these people to get them in line with whatever your agenda is. And this is exactly what they did. And we're talking about something that's ancient, that's here today, thus telling you exactly, again, who's in power, as you're going to see. So before TV and everything like that, how do you spread this information? Because as I said, we're talking about teaching people, start from kids or what have you, or if you just wanted new information to give to these adults or teenagers that fit into the system or, the body of teaching that they already know. And what they would do was they would go from town to town and they would basically tell these stories. Now, if you've seen Thor Ragnarok, just to give you quick examples, Thor Ragnarok, remember the scene in the beginning when Loki is basically having the play and he's basically lying, trying to basically explain the whole situation with the Tesseract. And he is, really disguised as Odin, sitting there listening to the story. But the story's a lie. But you notice people gathered around and it's a stage scene and people just listening to the story. And this is how they was telling their history and telling stories or passing information. Same thing if you played the game Assassin's Creed. Remember in Assassin's Creed, you're walking around through the village. It would be a guy out there preaching or talking to the crowd or telling a story. And you have people gather around in large groups listening to the story. So, they would basically hear the story, go home, tell their family, what have you. They would listen to the story, go and repeat it. And that's how information spread, how the story spread, what have you. So in ancient Greece, they did the same thing. So only difference was they would sometimes tell the stories in poems or songs to attract more people. A lot of people was entertained by the poems or the music. And it was easier to spread the information that way and get more people to gather around. And people will want to hear the story over and over again because they will want to learn it and know it so they can go teach it because it was a poem or a song. It was something cool to know, even so far back then. Now, they called their whole situation a rhapsode. And a rhapsode is basically, I'm just going to read here, etymology and usage. Now it says here, the term rhapsode is derived from rhapsodian, meaning to sew songs together. This word illustrates how the oral epic poem or rhapsode would build a repertoire or diverse myths, tales, and jokes to include in the content of the epic poem. Thus, it was possible through experience and improvisatory skills for him to shift the content of the epos, which epos is basically like a long poem, according to the preferred taste of a specific location's audience. Now, what does that sound like to you? Rhapsode. When you really pay attention to the word. Now, we all heard of rhapsody music. Now, rhapsody music, when you go and look at it, they'll tell you straight up that rhapsody music comes from rhapsode. And we know we have rap. And a lot of people are not going to put that together, but I'm telling you, when I keep saying that this stuff is not ours, that it was given to us, and we're not understanding what it is. And rap, it's poems. We tell stories. It's funny stuff in rap. This stuff they've been doing a long time. Plain and simple. And they understand that music is an influencer. If they understood that when they wrote the Bible, when they wrote those hymns and songs, the whole story of Satan himself, of course they knew that when they gave us music and understanding how powerful and influential it would be, for us to have this music and put it out. We were striving for an identity, something to hold on to. And they gave us that with rap, with music. We already was putting it out. We already started. It was a matter of time before they use our music or our talents against us. And it's in their mythology, and it's one of the biggest clues as to what's going on. So you have, Orpheism. You have the whole Orphic mythology. And it says here, the Orphic theogonies are genealogical works similar to the theogony of Hesiod, but the details are different. Of course, they are really different. The theogonies are symbolically similar to Near Eastern models. The main story has it that Dionysus, in his carnation as Zagreus, is the son of Zeus and Persephone. Zeus gives his inheritance of the throne to the child, as Zeus is to leave due to Hera's anger over a child being born by another mother. The Titans are enraged over the proclamation of attendance and, at Hera's instigation, decide to murder the child. Dionysus is then tricked with a mirror and children's toy by the Titans, who murder and consume him, eating babies. Athena saves the heart and tells Zeus of the crime, who in turn hurls a thunderbolt on the Titans. The resultant suit from which sinful mankind is born contains the bodies of the Titans and Dionysus. The soul of men, the Dionysus part, is therefore divine, but the body, the Titan part, holds the soul in bondage. Thus, it was declared that the soul returned to a host 10 times bound to the wheel of rebirth. Let that sink in for a second. So now, Orpheism is basically where we get Gnosticism. Plain and simple, talk about the same things, talking about flesh being evil. We know the whole Gnostic faith, talked about before, talk about the same thing. Being trapped in flesh being evil. Same stuff. It's not a coincidence they found the Nag Hammadi manuscripts where they found them. And again, the Dead Sea Scrolls, found a couple years later, being what they are, again, them putting together these stories, putting them out there for the time, to indoctrinate the people of the time in certain areas. That's what that stuff was about. You got a small town, you want to get this, 100 people or 52 people under this doctrine. You want it to fit what your agenda is. So this stuff pops up a lot, and we find it. But the Gnostic faith, a lot of people want to give it the credit for being the originator of that kind of thinking, of flesh being evil. But it's definitely not. And we can see that you had it back in ancient Greece, and everything else is found there. I mean, it's all there, everything. The whole primordial gods, the Agdol, the cosmic egg is even here. So it's saying here, Orphic poetry, this is 532 BC, made Nyx the first principal knight, and her offspring were many. Also, in the Orphic tradition, Phanes, a mystic Orphic deity of light and procreation, sometimes identified with the elder Eros, is the original ruler of the universe, who hatched from the cosmic egg. And there's many depictions of Phanes in the cosmic egg, and you'll see a serpent. A lot of this stuff we talked about before. This stuff is something, we get into this in a little bit more, where we can't ignore this whole serpent talk and dragon talk, is because it's everywhere. As I said, you're going to find this stuff in a lot of different places. Now, there's many other civilizations we could look to find stories about, primordial gods, cosmic eggs, and almost all of the ancient civilizations that we know of, that we really don't have so much information from. You'll be surprised how many civilizations have creation stories about the egg, and it's amazing. So in China, you have the story of Pangu, and it says here in the beginning there was an enormous egg containing chaos. Sounds familiar? Finally, the egg burst open, and out leaps the giant dragon Pangu. Now, it's different stories when you read this, just like in all the other mythologies. So in this story, you have sometimes it says when Pangu burst out of the egg, sometimes it's the dragon, sometimes it's the man. And, when he burst out of the egg, he created yin and yang. He basically separated yin and yang. And you look at the depiction of the egg being upper and lower. In some depictions, it'll say that he created earth, which will be on the bottom, and the sky, which will be on the top, by breaking out of the egg. So it says he created rivers with his fingers and strapped the earth down to create flat land. He gathered raw light and tossed them into the sky to become stars. The half-goddess Nua was born after Pangu died from part of the mixture of yin and yang that he had separated. She decided to create humans to have some other beings to talk to and share ideas with, but mostly just to love. She made hundreds and hundreds of mud humans, but soon realized that it would take centuries for her to make enough people. So, as the sun dried each drop, it became a new man or woman. Some say that these humans were the less intelligent ones. Those formed by Nua's own hand became great leaders. She told them to go and populate the earth. Go be fruitful and multiply, go populate. Same type of stories. We find this stuff throughout the ancient world, even with the Dogon. And again, stories are different depending on what you read. Amma and the egg that contains the universe. The early story of the universe has to do with a struggle between Amma, the creator, and Ogo, one of the creations. Sounds familiar? In the beginning, Amma alone was in the shape of an egg. The 4 collarbones were fused, dividing the egg into air, earth, fire, and water, establishing also the 4 cardinal directions. Within the cosmic egg was the material and the structure of the universe, and the 266 signs that embrace the essence of all things. The first creation of the world by Amma was, however, a failure. The second creation began when Amma planted a seed within herself, a seed that resulted in the shape of man. But in the process of its gestation, there was a flaw, meaning that the universe would now have within it the possibility for incompleteness. Now the egg became 2 placentas, each containing a set of twins, male and female. Think about what I'm saying, everything we've been talking about. After 60 years, one of the males, Ogo, broke out of the placenta and attempted to create his own universe, in opposition to that being created by Amma. But he wasn't able to say the words that would bring such a universe into being. He then descended as Amma transformed into the earth, the fragment of placenta that went with Ogo, unto the void. Ogo interfered with the creative potential of the earth by having incestuous relations with it. His counterpart, Nomo, a participant in the revolt, was then killed by Amma. The parts of his body cast in all directions, bringing a sense of order to the world. When 5 days later, Amma brought the pieces of Namo's body together, restoring him to life. Namo became ruler of the universe. He created 4 spirits, the ancestors of the Dogon people. Amma sent Nomo and the spirits to earth in an ark. And so the earth was restored along the way. Nomo uttered the words of Amma, and the sacred words that create were made available to humans. In the meantime, Ogo was transformed by Amma into Yuguru, the pale fox, who will always be alone, always be incomplete, eternally in revolt, ever wandering the earth, seeking his female soul. And there's so much we can really get into with just the story of the Dogon, but have a whole DVD coming out on the Dogon in the near future. But wanted to put out there not just these 2 other stories, and Greek mythology as well as Egyptian mythology, all involving this cosmic egg, serpents or what have you.